Hey everyone, great to see you all for this discussion today. Um, I am a public engagement program manager here at APS and a community manager for JNIPER, and I'll be moderating our panel today. My dog might make an appearance on the Zoom screen, so apologies if that's distracting. I'll try to keep her at bay. To start us off, though, I would love to hear a little bit more about or from our panelists about themselves and their connection to the topic that we'll be discussing today, which is recognition of public engagement work. So I'm going to give each panelist a few minutes to introduce themselves, and then we have a set of prepared questions we'll discuss, and then we'll definitely take questions from the audience. So audience members, if you think of questions as the discussion is going on, please feel free to drop them in that notes document, and Meg and I will be sure to track those to ask of the panelists. So to kick us off, I see Jonathan is the first on my screen. So Jonathan, if you don't mind, I'm kicking us off on introductions. Welcome and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, hello, everyone. I hope y'all had a nice end of the semester. I know I did. This week is much better than last week. I'm an associate professor of instruction at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm also the associate chair for our foundational courses, 5,000 intro students per year, and the director of our learning assistant program. As far as Juniper and public engagement outreach goes, I got heavily involved in many of these programs as a graduate student for many years back at Texas A&M, and then transitioning to UT, we run kind of a much smaller program, very much modeled on astronomy on tap at a local bar down on 6th Street, where all the college kids want to go. But then on top of that as well, with background in physics education research, actually studying the impacts, particularly on students, of their engagement and activities within these spaces has kind of been the focus of work between me and collaborators for about the last 6 years. And I get to talk about some of that here today.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to pass it over now to Erin.
Hi, everyone. Erin McKiernan. So I am a professor in the Department of Physics, biomedical physics program at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. So I'm based in Mexico City. I'm also the director of programs and strategies for a nonprofit called the Open Research Community Accelerator, or ORCA, hence my virtual background. And I'll drop a link later in the chat so you can learn more about ORCA. But essentially, we're a nonprofit that is dedicated to making science more open, engaging, and accessible. So really a lot of promotion of open science and intersections of open science with education as well. I'm connected to this topic in terms of recognition of public engagement, I think in two ways. One is a research angle, and then one is really my personal journey in terms of the road to promotion and tenure. In the research angle, I've been part of a multi-year project where we were looking at promotion and tenure guidelines across a number of universities in the US and Canada. One of our papers was looking at how the kind of public dimensions of faculty work get recognized. And it won't surprise most of you that work isn't really recognized, right? So often we see in those documents that words like public and community get mentioned, but there's no really strict incentives for recognizing that work. When it is recognized, it gets relegated to a service category, which is really that undervalued category of faculty work. So really trying to correct what I see as kind of a fundamental mismatch there that's come out of our research. And then the other piece, the personal piece, is I went up for promotion and tenure a few years ago in 2022. Ultimately, my case was successful, but it was a bit of a fight. And I will say that, it was really disconcerting to see that all the work that I had in terms of outreach, in terms of engagement, not only was not recognized, but possibly counted against me. And so a very personal also motivation to work on this topic. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you, Erin. And Paul, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Paul Kwiat. I'm a professor of physics at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I think I might be the only person who had slides, but I'll forego them at the moment, I think, since no one else put them up. People ask, I can show some things. So the reason I guess I'm here is it's sort of twofold. One, I was probably invited because I direct this thing called Lab Escape, which is a science-based escape room. I think it's was the first one back in 2016 when we started. A couple of other activities like that are coming around. More generally, though, our department, the physics department, has at least four major, what I would say, public engagement activities. So LabScape is one of them. We have a public quantum network. We have a lot of things with music, dance, and physics. And also, we've had a physics van program that just had its 30th anniversary. And so there's been a lot of obviously efforts coming out of the department. And I have some sense of like how much support there's been for each of those, at different kind of levels. I've also been serving on the Departmental Appointments and Promotions Committee over the last decade, and it won't really be a big secret to reveal that the public engagement, it just has not really been more or less a discussion in any of those type of topics. It might be something that's mentioned kind of on the side of this person is doing X, Y, or Z, and that's great. But the decisions never come down to that. And I think partly it's that not that the department doesn't feel that that's would be significant or interesting, but comments are always made about, well, the campus committee on promotions is going to raise a flag because of this thing with publications or because of this thing with teaching, but no one ever says they're going to raise a flag because of something with raise a flag or wave a flag because of something with outreach. Okay, I guess that's enough of a background of why I'm here.
Thank you all for introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your experience. Let me also ask, I think, Jonathan, did you share your personal connection to how public engagement was or was not recognized in your tenure case? Or would you like to? Because I know
Um,
UT has an interesting kind of mechanism you were able to use.
so I have that down as notes for one of your prepared questions
Oh, okay.
to talk
Okay.
about,
Let
so I
me
can hold off for a minute.
yeah, hold off. We'll get to that. So let me start. I know you each have coming from different universities, different experiences. Um, so I'm wondering what aspects of your institutional or departmental culture do you think contribute to how PE, public engagement, is recognized or not recognized at your institution? You're all obviously involved in public engagement. Are there aspects of where you're located that you think serve to encourage or discourage that work? And I'll open that up to anyone who'd like to answer first.
Let me just attempt a quick thing, which is that I think, as in many things, for example, as in trying to get more women in my research group, the first ones are very hard, and then it becomes easier when there's already things that are there to sort of set the example. So the fact that we've had a program, as I say, this physics fan program that's been running, where they bring demos to local elementary schools, that's been running for 30 years, and so that was in place even though I've been here for 25 years now. That was already running, but by the time we got here, there was one of the faculty was going on TV once a week for a little news segment. A bunch of us kind of flowed through that, and so the fact that those kind of things were already present, I think then when you have a new idea, oh, this would be interesting, and there was like a Saturday morning physics lecture that's been going on for a long time. I think then when you have another idea about how to engage people, and you already have in some sense a community of people who obviously are at least somewhat interested in that, I think it's then easier to try and introduce yet a new thing to the mix.
Yeah, definitely. I hear that, Paul, of kind of starting is the hardest part to be very cliche about it. But also, I think that point you have of community, of if there's someone else doing it or multiple people doing it that you can kind of connect with, that definitely is one of the reasons we have Juniper to have that community aspect, bring people together on this topic. Jonathan or Erin, do you have any comments you want to make about your departmental or institutional culture that may or may not be promoting or not, I guess, public engagement work?
So I know from UT standpoint, I don't know. I view it kind of as maybe the typical view, at least for the tenure line faculty. It's welcome. It's approved of. There is, a committee that oversees it, encourages it, but it's not necessarily heavily supported, or necessarily celebrated when they do that. If it is celebrated, it's because they've done something innovative and new. And of course, innovative and new for outreach also sometimes flies kind of in the face of kind of like Paul was just talking about 30 years, such a long history of trust, of consistency, delivering, good, material to the public. Innovation kind of flies a little bit odds if you're constantly reinventing the wheel for a line on a CV for those kind of programs. But it is okay, to do. There's actually one aspect that's a little different. We actually have a program called Physics Circus, which may be similar to this. Our graduate students go out to local area schools, a few times a semester and do a outreach show. A lot of science, a lot of entertainment. They actually have a full script for it, and that program has been very consistent. But it's viewed as graduate professional development. Get used to talking to outside audiences. Not a lot of heavy faculty involvement. For my own case is a little bit different. So being instructional faculty, not tenure track, what UT calls professional track. One, we're all mostly new to the department, within just the last 6 years, 6.5 now. But when I went up for promotion, my colleague and I, last year, the university had actually changed a little bit about the promotion. This was very different, actually benefited me in ways I very much appreciated. I think the typical one for non-tenure track promotion is you've got your main area, teaching, research, or service, and maybe you talk about, a second area, a second bin that you did work. UT changed this, and you still have your primary area, teaching, research, or service. And then it's basically everything else. Now, they call the everything else additional contributions to the academic enterprise. And it's still supposed to be, a cohesive narrative about what else have you done that, follows your professional trajectory, talks about your interests, and is, raise the reputation, et cetera, of the university. But outreach very much was an element that you could include in that. And, being an instructor, I view it as, benefits for students in many ways, as relates to some of our research I'll mention later on. And so this was very nice because instead of just talking about service and all these committees that I might have been on, going to be a little broader in the way to approach it for that. And I'll be honest, it worked. I got promoted. I received zero feedback about that was actually viewed by anyone who reviewed it. So all I know is it worked. I actually don't know what was said about it.
Super, super interesting, and a kind of a interesting example of how a flexible flexible format worked for you there. Erin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you. So to give folks a bit of a context, UNAM, which is the institution I work at, is I believe it's the largest public university in Latin America. And it has because of that, has kind of a special role. And it does have language at the institutional level on the importance of social benefit, the importance of reaching out to the community. And we do have outreach as an explicitly listed activity that we're supposed to undertake. So I think that's probably the positive. In practice, I'm not sure that works the way it's intended. So I will say that both my institution and my department are very traditional. And that means in practice that traditional outputs like publications are heavily weighted, and those seem to be the primary thing that committees are looking at when they make decisions on hiring and promotion and tenure. I'll also say we have a very strong disciplinary focus, so kind of narrow definitions, in my opinion, of what is physics and who is physics for. And that translates kind of into an undervaluing of those broader activities, interdisciplinary work, policy work, engagement work, that folks don't necessarily see as speaking to other physicists or fitting into those disciplinary boundaries. So I think that is something that works against us. And again, so we have language in kind of the higher level documents and in the departmental level documents that talk about outreach, but I don't see that as actually counting in practice. I'm also going to share a study in the chat that just came out through Inside Higher Ed. So you might say, well, okay, this is physics and this is your experience within the discipline, but they did a study with social scientists, and you would think that for especially social scientists, engagement and outreach would get valued. And even the social scientists were saying it's really not getting valued in terms of evaluation. So some kind of depressing data there, unfortunately. But on the other hand, we're not alone, I think, in these experiences. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that's something we'll make sure to drop that in the resources in the notes document. It's interesting because I'm hearing, both I think like from Paul, hearing a lot about like culture, right? Like, so what are people actually doing? And then also from Erin and Jonathan, some like policy, sometimes which is enforced and sometimes maybe which isn't. And so an interesting interaction and kind of like how those different factors can or cannot help with recognition of public engagement. And as I think we've probably all experienced in some ways, it's often a combination of both, right? Structures and culture that promotes change. One thing that we all talked about kind of in our pre-panel, our pre-brief, was the role of students in engagement, and also like thinking about recognition from that aspect. Jonathan, for example, I know you mentioned the physics circus and right how that is seen as something like a good opportunity for graduate student professional development. You've also studied the impact of public engagement on graduate students, on undergrad and graduate students. Can you share a little bit more about your findings from that work?
Sure. And this is when I will use the slides. So let me share briefly. Okay. I promised that I would keep things to short periods, so I'm going to talk a little quickly and then drop a link at the end here. I distilled what was like 50 slides into just a few, so I promise it was not much. But this does come from a recent project. This is the large team from multiple institutions: University of Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Lutheran University, American Institute of Physics, Society of Physics Students, University of Alabama. It's a big team. Been very great working on this. The goal actually built from a single institution study. So the single institution study was done Texas A&M, which has a very large, robust 20-year history of more significant investment in outreach activities, huge program, hundreds of volunteers who work with the programs over the years, thousands upon thousands of attendees. But we found a number of effects on students about their identity, their interest and motivation, their development of what we call career skills, non-disciplinary skills, their sense of belonging, mindset, etc. But a single institution, great, wonderful. You have a unique culture, so what? Well, that's not accurate. Outreach happens all over the place. There are many wonderful programs everywhere. So this large team built a national study that was distributed to the Society of Physics Students Network in spring 2023. Sent the email out to 5,500 students, about 700 responses nationally. So all the various institutions. This is the breakdown of demographics, and really just takeaway is we got a pretty good cross section. Men and women, freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors, those who both did and did not do outreach, etc. So it's a pretty good cross section, of our undergraduate physics population. The survey itself comprised about 60 or so items to try and collect a lot of information. Most of those items were centered around the factors we'd seen in the single institution study: motivation, belonging, competence, recognition, self-efficacy, mindset, etc., while also tracking, engagement with outreach, who they are, background factors, parents' education, etc. After doing a number of regression models and making the highlights of the regression model study for the survey, a couple things that we take away from this. One, participating in outreach really helps students communicate their knowledge both to those in and out of the field. They felt significantly more confident, both talking to other experts, other physicists, and people outside. Of course, seniors were more likely to have done outreach than freshmen. I think the final number actually is 4 times. I forgot to edit the slide, but of course they are. Participating in outreach is significantly linked to possessing more of a growth mindset and a greater sense of belonging to the field. Essential elements for continuing to learn and to grow in the field and for persisting in the major. The regression model results also kind of mirrored a lot of other prior studies about identity in terms of motivation, recognition, etc. And one of the key takeaways for us from this is also that aside from being a freshman, no other demographics were really showing any positive or negative trend with participating in outreach. It didn't seem to matter who they were. Everyone seemed to participate equally in this. So what's the impact that we see quantitatively from the study is growth mindset, sense of belonging. It is helping or is linked to these factors in students. We have another study which nuances a little bit more of this from some open-ended responses as well, which is going to highlight more about enhanced disciplinary knowledge, networking within departments, etc. But basically, students get a lot from doing outreach and really stuff they don't get inside the classroom. A lot of learning happens outside the classroom, whether it's from doing research, from engaging in teaching programs, from doing these things or organizations. But they really get a lot of focused skills and experience that help reinforce their identity, help them belong, help them learn, and make them better capable of engaging in modern careers when they're done. Stop it.
Thank you for sharing that. And I dropped the link to the paper in the chat for those who are interested. I think it's something if probably most of us on this call have experienced if we engaged in outreach as students ourselves, or if we currently are working with students on outreach projects, that some of these findings maybe aren't that surprising, but so powerful and so important in terms of recognition. And I think maybe one of the things we want to talk about today is, well, okay, if there's all these benefits for our students, for those becoming physicists, how can we make sure that's recognized at then the faculty level, where the faculty hopefully are some of the ones helping run these programs or start them or support them as well. I know I see Ed's hand. I know Ed has run a program with students and engagement. Ed, do you have a question that builds on this, or is it a different topic?
No, I do. First of all, great panel. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. And, I think that, Jonathan, what you're just highlighting, these benefits to students, to me seems super important in my institution. People care about the work we do in the community, but they really care about the undergraduates, which makes sense, right? We're a university. But I wondered if any of you have had experience with something like a service learning, leveraging the existing kind of systems in the university, right? We teach courses, faculty get credit for that, students get credit for that. And if students can do this kind of work as a service learning activity, and faculty member can, organize it in that capacity, maybe we can leverage some of the existing structures and reward systems. And I'm just wondering if anybody has seen anything around that or found that useful.
Maybe I can comment on that. So at UNAM and many other Latin American institutions, for undergrads, it's actually a degree requirement to do what's called a social service project. So this is they register the project within the university. They have to have a faculty advisor. As faculty, it's highly recommended that I advise a certain number of those projects every year as part of my kind of larger portfolio. And so this is about 480 hours over a period of at least 6 months that they need to do. And again, this is a requirement to graduate. They have to liberate that social service project to be able to go forward to graduate. I would say the original idea was this to kind of connect and engage with the public and provide a formal mechanism to do that. The idea was that each project should have some social relevance so they could go out in the community and work at community centers or things like that. In practice, I'll say, unfortunately, I don't think it's really worked that way because there have been, I don't know if it's, there have been difficulties connecting with those community centers or just finding those projects. What it's sort of ended up being is just another research project for the student to work on. And, it's good, it gets them some experience, but it doesn't really have that social component. And so I think, I don't know, we need to revisit that and say, we have to kind of embed that social engagement, that public engagement component in the way these projects are designed and evaluated so that they meet their original intention. But at least it is a part of the formal kind of institutional way that the degree program is set up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to add from my own perspective. Actually, I love hearing that it's for the degree perspective. I learned recently our biology department makes their graduate students do an outreach activity once per year for their evaluation. And I really want to steal that from my department. But to add to this a little bit, so there's a couple institutions in Texas that have actually run some courses, either independent study, 0 credit hour, or elective. But it's actually not on the delivery side, it's on the building side. So students in these courses, Texas A&M, of course, led this. Rice and UT have just kind of tried to copy it in the best ways that we can. The students are in this class to build, fabricate, improve, repair demonstrations that are used for outreach activities. So it's much more of an independent learning type course. And then often they're engaging in the activities, outreach activities available at the university around that with the products of this work. Those are kind of new, for us, it's kind of new, at least for the way we do this. They have a showcase at the end of the semester, but they're really just talking to other people from the department. But it makes them get out and talk to them at least once, and they have opportunities to bring that to other aspects as well. But so far, for us, it's sitting in an elective band for students.
Tatiana, and then I'll hand it over to Paul. But
Yeah,
Tatiana,
I just wanted, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you.
I just wanted to add that students who build these demonstrations at Texas A&M, they must present it to the general public, at least 7,000 of them at the physics festival. So there is this component. So it's 0 credit hour course plus service to the public that is a requirement for this course. So it's kind of combination of both. And we use not to run it as a 0 credit hour. We changed it to 0 credit hour course. And I think it works better, at least for faculty, who get these classes as part of their teaching load in terms of recognition.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Tatiana. And Paul. Oh, you're muted still.
Awesome. Testing your lip reading abilities. Yeah, the last comment made me think about the fact that we, at our university, we have a very large engineering open house that happens every spring, where for 2 days, there's lots of demos from all, where physics is actually in the College of Engineering. So anyway, lots of almost all student-led activities for the public, and tens of thousands of people come into town for that. And so that's also been running for a long time. I don't think that there's any credit for it, but it is supported in the sense that the students can get money to help set up their things. So in that sense, I think that's very helpful. With regard to this, notion of having students work on things, I mean, certainly with LabEscape, we've had roughly 30 students who have worked on various and sundry puzzles that, actually fabricating and designing things and trying to figure out the right way to make things that are robust against 10-year-olds and things like that. And I think that that's important and also very helpful because that's where you really learn. Actually, you learn a lot of very practical skills because you have to get things to work, to actually work, and not just to work like once in a laboratory setting, but to work like all the time. So in that sense, it's a kind of could not just engineering, but I might say product engineering, as it were, in a way that it has to work continuously. The last thing I would say is that at least for us, one of the things that engaging with the public is sort of critical. We only survive if we get people to come. And so one of the main ways that we advertise, for example, is we're at the farmers market several times in the summer. We have a table out and we just interact with, or if there's a street festival or something like that, we tend to get a booth. And then we are just trying to interact with as many people, thousands of people basically. And the pitch is not, oh, come to an escape room. The pitch is, oh, you want to see something cool, and then we have some cool physics demo that gets people to be surprised by things, and then we can say, oh, are you interested in this other thing? And definitely having students be able to do those is critical. And I would say also most of our missions are run by students, and I think that that's also very important if they're addressing students. So in particular, like in the summer, we have a bunch of high school students who come through STEM high school at our summer camps who come and do lab escape. And I think the impedance matching is a lot better when it is the student workers who are sort of running them through than when it's, some old white guy like me. That just is not going to be the best, even though the things that I say will be closer to what I might want to be said to them in terms of like what's true explanations and putting things in the context of quantum information and things like that. Nevertheless, I still think it's better to have a message that is set at the 90% accuracy level, but impedance matches 90% than the thing that I say, which is at the 99% accuracy level, but impedance matches only 10%. The product of those two things is really kind of the important number, I think. And so that's why it's absolutely critical for us for the outreach. It would not work as well by any means without the students, I think.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for all of those examples. I think that's really it's helpful for me I learned about some new examples. It's helpful hopefully for those on the call just to know about different ways institutions are incorporating students in this service learning, because you're right, Ed, that is teaching is nominally at least a part of a faculty member's job. And so outreach being a venue where a lot of teaching does happen and is important learning for students, I think is a really important point as you think about recognition of that work. I'll note also for those who maybe haven't seen, Sarah Purdue in the chat also dropped some examples from University of Wisconsin-Madison for those just looking for some other examples. And yes, Ed, I believe you're right that Little Shop of Physics at CSU, Colorado State, does have a similar program. I mean, certainly they involve students in building all of their demos and activities. They have and then big kind of festival fair where the public comes in for that. And I do think some of the students do that for course credit, if I remember correctly. I know definitely some of them do that for kind of like a paid position, which is also nice. But yes, some credit there as well. And we've heard from, I think, this might have been over a year ago now, but Eric Hazlitt at, I want to say St. Olaf. I always get it confused. St. Olaf runs a course that seems kind of similar to what Jonathan and Tatiana were describing, but where it's a lab-based course, but the students are involved in actually building demos that they bring to the local community, but that's, part of their lab course for their physics degree. Moving on maybe to a slightly different topic, although we can come back, circle around. Erin, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about some of the work that Orca has done around this idea of recognizing public engagement work. I know there's a couple of different initiatives. You shared some of the research, but wonder if you could share that with us just as more examples of tools we might want to pull on.
Absolutely. And sorry, just to make a quick clarifying point. So the RPT study that we did, that was prior to Orca. So that was with actually I think I put in the chat, but Juan Pablo Alfrin at Simon Fraser and Meredith Niles at University of Vermont. But yeah, now kind of continuing, really that work was to figure out what do these RPT documents actually say and where are the gaps? And now what we're trying to do with Orca is what are the solutions? What can we actually do to fix some of the problems we've identified through the prior research? So there's two things. One is that a few years ago, we began running some online and in-person workshops on what's called values-based assessment, really inspired by the work of Hugh Metrics, and I can again share a link to their site in the chat. But this idea being that, if there are certain values that we hold in high esteem, like transparency or accessibility or, diversity, equity, inclusion, those values have to be embedded in our assessment frameworks in some way, or we fundamentally have this mismatch between what we value and what we're actually recognizing. So we worked with faculty, kind of workshopping at the beginning, what are the values that are important for you? And then what might be some of the behavioral indicators you would be looking for in faculty that would embody those values and you could actually work into an assessment framework. And so thanks, Ali, for sharing that link. So this is, we've put together this framework. It has 14 values overall. It's not supposed to be kind of exhaustive, but it's just supposed to give folks an example of what would values-based assessment really look like. So we did that. And then the idea was, okay, this is a tool, but now we need to see how this tool works in practice. And so now we're working with two professional societies, the Academic Data Science Alliance, or ADSA, and I'm going to have to read this out because I always forget, the Council of Graduate Departments of Psychology, so COGDOP. Two different disciplines, but we're working with them to say, what would a disciplinary kind of specific version of this values framework look like for you? And then can we kind of develop and potentially road test language that you could actually implement in your promotion and tenure or even hiring guidelines? So we've been doing that with those professional societies. That's still very much a work in progress, but something that we think is really important. The professional societies really do kind of set those disciplinary norms for their fields. And faculty look to them as kind of a beacon for recommendations and things like that. And so we do think that the professional society has a special role to play there in terms of how they can sort of give faculty leverage or cover to say, my professional society thinks this is important. Now we need to do it at the level of my department. So that's one piece. But really, we know that the change actually happens at the institutional level or at the departmental level with folks who can implement this language and implement these types of frameworks. So the other thing Orca is doing is we're putting money into this. So we've raised $1.5 million through several foundations, philanthropies that have contributed to this cause. And again, I'll put that information in the chat. This is called the Modernizing Academic Appointment and Advancement, so the MA3 Challenge. And thanks, Ali. We're going to be awarding at least up to 6 grants for departmental projects, and then up to 6 grants for larger projects at the level of, for example, a school, a faculty, or an institution. The departmental level grants are $50K, and the larger tier 1, the larger grants are $250K. That application process will close on January 8th. So I know it's not too much more time, but if any of you are interested in applying, we would highly encourage you to do so. We have both kind of informational office hours, but also one-on-one consultations if you have a project idea and you want to reach out to us. But yeah, the idea here is for many years, we've kind of heard that promotion and tenure is this thing we just can't tackle. And we want to kind of push against that and say, we think it is something you can tackle. And, not all the projects have to be on this specifically, but we do have language on the website, and I'll just read it here, that says that we're particularly interested in let's see, I'm just trying to get the language here. Not limited to public engagement, but particularly interested in proposals that address how can academics meaningfully engage with impacted communities and populations during their research life cycle. So if you have ideas for how to embed this into your institutions, evaluations, we would love to see those. And again, I'll share some more information in the chat.
And this is open to any discipline, correct?
Yeah, open to any discipline. There are some eligibility requirements. It has to be a U.S. institution. For the moment, we would love to do something international at some point, but right now it's U.S. based. And then, for example, if you're doing the larger kind of tier one where it's at the level of a faculty or school, we need a letter of support from a provost or some academic leadership at the institution. But the eligibility requirements are on that website. But yeah, not just open to physics, open to all kinds of disciplines and all kinds of ideas, but really emphasizing the let's put those ideas into action piece.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's I really appreciated your description of kind of different, I guess, like levels of the system and how they all interplay into this idea of recognition, right? So disciplinary societies have a role, colleges have a role, departments have a role, right? We have individuals have a role. We all have a role to play. And I think we've heard that in some of your different personal experiences, right? About how, like Paul, you were saying how on your promotion and tenure committee discussions, right? Like you're never concerned that like the college level committee is going to be concerned about lack of outreach, but they might be concerned about papers, right? And so there's this interplay of all these different systems. I will mention here, if you've been on Juniper Call before, you've probably heard it, but in terms of disciplinary societies doing important things, APS a year ago put out a policy statement on public engagement saying that institutions should recognize that work. I'll drop that link in the chat if you haven't seen it. But I really like some of these resources, Erin, that you mentioned about, okay, well, how it's great that APS has said that. And I think, practical tools for maybe helping people implement that are great and helpful, and something that I think as Juniper, we want to try to promote examples of people using that statement. Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for dropping that in there. So I wonder, Paul or Jonathan, have you seen examples at your respective institutions of policies or practices maybe that you think can be used as particular like leverage to pull for more recognition of public engagement, either something that's happened or maybe an opportunity you think that could be taken up in the future?
Jonathan, if you have an answer to her question, that means that you completely understood it, which is great. But I didn't quite follow can you try again in slightly different words?
Yeah. Let me rephrase that. So, do you, are there any particular maybe levers that that either we've touched on or haven't touched on yet that you think could be impactful for promoting more recognition of public engagement work? I think I was specifically asking, are there levels maybe at like kind of the institutional level, but any type of lever, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on things that could be used to promote more recognition.
Great. So I guess along those lines, the thing that I've seen that tend to get more university buy-in and support are things that are going to be big-ish kinds of things. So, for example, when we had a couple of years ago, my colleague launched the Public Quantum Network, which is this entanglement connection to our local public library. So that was, we engaged. She started the engagement with the upper echelons at the university, and it kind of steamrolled and got a lot of people. And it's like, oh, we're going to have the mayor there, and we're going to have the provost there, and I think they tend to like these things that can be big, kind of big shiny things, as opposed to lots of little glittery things are not as easy for them to promote in that regard. I know that's also true. Some of the things that my colleagues, Smita Vishweshwara, has done a lot of these like dance and physics types of things, and also at the APS meetings and things like that. And again, things that can be then promoted in the larger space, so it looks big. So, and the university is happy to be associated with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
Jonathan.
to your question, have I seen anything? No. I wish I did. I have thoughts and ideas, but I think it's probably going to take some of Erin's grants or projects to maybe bring some of that to fruition. In thinking of what it could be, I think it's about highlighting the benefits to students. Because I think
Mm,
often we think of, public engagement and outreach as like it's a benefit to the public. Yeah, it's kind of that side thing of like we do our own thing and we do some good for everyone else around us too. Which of course maybe not the core mission of like land grant universities, which are supposed to be a general benefit, to their
yeah.
states and societies. But I think there is a high value to our students. Even before did this research, we thought there was a high value, to the students as well. And we do value this, I think, at some points, like undergraduate research is valued and something you can put on your lines and you can put into these reviews. That mentorship, of research students is something that can go into teaching and you have a line for it and you can talk about the efforts in there. Departments which run, undergraduate teacher programs, learning assistants, UGTAs,
Mhm.
there are ways and methods to, structure this and reward this to have the value. Now, those two things have, undergraduate researcher produces some research, does conference presentations, may eventually contribute or write a paper. Undergraduate teachers, they engage with courses and there's, some impacts to the courses. So as I say all this, I recognize that I'm missing the deliverable, from doing this, but there must be like the values assessment or the number of activities or students you engage with. There doesn't seem like a big reach to make a deliverable to highlight the impact to students to make this a more recognizable activity.
Mm,
Yeah, maybe I can follow up on that, Jonathan. Like, I think there's one important point that you had there, which is that we're not saying you have to throw everything out the door and redo we're saying that there are different ways to be recognized. As a faculty member, there are kind of alternative pathways, and there are some folks who are already doing great things in this, and just working in a recognition for the things they're already doing is important. And maybe I wanted to share one thing. So, um, as Jonathan said, there, I think we're hoping through this MA3 challenge we can create more of those case studies, because there aren't a lot, or at least there may be folks that are doing things and are not necessarily highly visible yet, because a lot of these promotion and tenure processes happen behind closed doors. But I did find this example in higher ed, where it's the University of Illinois. Yeah, it's and they're talking about, again, like an alternative pathway. So not necessarily throwing out everything you've done previously, which tends to get folks up in arms and not get a lot of buy-in. But they created through the provost office this alternative pathway. It says publicly engaged research option pathway for promotion and tenure. So for folks who are heavily engaged and doing this, they created this alternative route. And I think one of the leverage points they used there was this idea that we have waning public trust in science and waning public trust in higher ed institutions. And so they were thinking of this pathway as a way to bolster that public trust piece. And that is something that I think that academic leadership responds to, and is also going to be something that in these times is going to be increasingly important, I think. So yeah, creating those alternative pathways, working within the structures, and getting the academic leadership involved with those leverage points like public trust that seem to resonate.
yeah, that's certainly something I think at APS with our Science Trust project, which is all about all about promoting trust. We've seen definitely, I think, an uptake in interest, certainly this year, 2025, in those programs. So just I agree with this idea of like public trust, especially of institutions, seems to be top of mind for a lot of people in the current climate. And I love the idea also, Jonathan, you were pointing out of, like what are existing like structures we could maybe tie into, but also thinking about like what is that deliverable, what is that output that we can point to for for students. And we've talked previously, right? Is it course credit? Is it other things? So many benefits there. I wonder, going from the higher level to the to the individual level, have you all experienced or heard of particular change agents maybe who helped push through some recognition of public engagement, either like named individuals or roles? So it sounds like, for example, Erin, you just mentioned an example from Illinois where a provost perhaps was particularly important in pushing that through. Have you all experienced any particular change agents in your experiences, your institutions or colleagues?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in. So one that we've kind of detected as a sweet spot in terms of academic leadership, but also in a position to enact change, is department chairs. So I mentioned we're working with this group with department chairs in psychology. In particular, we've collaborated with Mike Doherty from the University of Maryland, and he was instrumental a few years ago in his role as department chair. He actually put forward a complete overhaul of their promotion and tenure guidelines that incorporated open science activities. I think they also do have public engagement. Again, I'll try to find that link. But really, again, that position of department chair being really key in that they have some power to enact change, but they're also really acutely aware of their departmental culture and the disciplinary needs. So I think engaging department chairs is really going to be key here. And sorry, Tatiana, I think had her hand up.
Yeah, Tatiana, did you want to share or ask a question?
Actually, I lowered my hand because I wanted to say that department heads.
Okay. Well, two
So
votes for
for
that. That's
us,
good, though.
yes, exactly. I just second this opinion and I lowered my hand because everything was said. But for us, for our program, the department head was absolutely crucial. So creating a position for a person who would create and run outreach program, creating atmosphere when faculty participate, creating the atmosphere and culture in the department when the participation in these activities are considered as benefit to career rather than downside and diminishing their important career achievements. So this is department head, and this could not be underestimated. I also wanted to say that promotion of students, that these programs are crucial for students, helped me, for example, to win the grant that basically just moved our program up from the university, because universities are interested in students, and program DEEP that we started with the big grant that I received from university when I promoted not the public, but benefits from the university.
Students. Mm-hmm.
So, for the students.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that experience. I think that's really it's helpful for me. It's the more I can hear of different institutions where similar experiences are happening, I think that points to trends that are useful to know. And I think certainly the idea of department chair or some department leadership being important in change certainly resonates with the research on adoption of active learning techniques, for example. So it's not a huge stretch to imagine that it would also be important for engagement and outreach, promoting that. Ed, yes, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, this is not exactly a change agent, but it's somebody that I think can help, or positions that can often help in those efforts. And that's if the president of the university or other people at those higher leadership levels have an initiative around community engagement. I think it depends on your type of institution. I think I'm at a regional university, and I think often in these types of institutions that is valued. But I think some of the things people have just talked about is, show how it benefits our students. There's career preparation. Those things can align what the department cares about with this broader institutional. So, when the president's talking about this community engagement work that they may care about, it's not just the social sciences and those kind of folks doing that sort of work in their fields in the community, but you can see and craft that for the physics department to see, oh yeah, we could actually be part of that too, and maybe this is good for us in, this sort of larger system of the university to be able to show how we're advancing the goals that our president or leadership has.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Paul.
Muted. So I definitely second that being able to reach the higher levels is also very important. Obviously, the department chairs are critical for anything actually moving at the small scale and being able to provide whatever resources are needed to move projects. But if you can make it to that higher level, and usually at that higher level, that is where they're more interested in highlighting what the good for the broader community is and what the role of the university is in the context of the state, and the state should be giving more money to the university to support it. It's because the state, again, we're also a land grant university, so being able to show that that has a benefit for the local community, or even the statewide, or the national community, I think is important. I will just say one thing, which is that the one. Uh, Again, I didn't show any of my slides, but I had kind of like pros and cons of support and not support. And the one thing I will say that I have found trouble with is actually getting the higher up people to come and directly experience outreachy types of things. Yeah, I have tried many, many times to get a lot of our upper echelons to come. Maybe they don't want to be locked up. Okay, that's fine. But I find it just in general, I find it really quite difficult, and I don't exactly know what is behind that, to be honest. And I do feel like the support would be even more if they were able to experience, and they were, or particularly, or come and watch students experience it at the same time, and actually see what the positive benefits are at kind of real hand. It's kind of one thing to say, oh, here's a survey where people said that they liked it or didn't like it, but it's quite another thing to have the actual direct experience of it.
Yeah.
Paul, Allie, do you mind if my experience is those folks always want good PR. So if you can get to know people in your university's communications department and get some photos of, right, any news that is good news and not about them a budget cut or a scandal or any other stuff like that, right? They will love that, and they might show up for that, and you'll just happen to have cool stuff for them to do.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that in the JNIPER white paper that this community put together, one of the recommendations is trying to get those in higher positions, even also, local politicians or local community leaders to show up to these events to, as you said, Paul, kind of really experience it. So definitely good to troubleshoot like how to get people to actually come, because I do think it can be really powerful once they do. Jonathan.
So I think I'm just going to echo a little bit, the higher level, but I think, and I'm going to represent the second hand, so I'm probably inaccurate on some levels, but I think part of how we got the change here at UT for broadening what is recognized, at least for the professional track. I know it started kind of at our college level. They had an assistant dean, particularly for our professional track faculty. But from the top, presidents and provosts, there was this push to professionalize this, other half of the faculty. Because we have 4,000 faculty, it's roughly half and half. And it came with a lot of things. They redid all the title sequences, so at least it was all the same titles. But then there kept being, I think, this comment and feedback of like, we're not able to represent all that we do. And it went through the dean's offices, it went to faculty affairs, and it's kind of this thread of, this is not working for us. There's more here. And I think with enough consistent messaging from, a number of, departments, especially our college has a professional track, faculty committee that represents our interests. That message eventually got through and it was heard. So I think you don't always have to go always to the top person. There's faculty affairs people. They're always around. They work very, very hard. And I think they listen when you tell them that something's just not quite working.
Yeah, again, I'm just thinking back to research many moons ago in my postdoc that that we did on active learning uptake. And you're totally right, Jonathan, that a change agent we found in that context certainly could be a department chair, and that was important, or a provost or a president, but also really leadership roles in many different ways, right? People are leaders in their different spheres, and all of them can be really important change agents. I want to make sure I turn to the audience and see if there's additional questions or comments that you all have. Or Meg, I'm trying to look at the notes document. Have you seen any come in?
We have not had any that haven't been voiced yet.
Okay. Well, let me pause for a moment and see if anybody has a question they'd like to raise. Lots of good discussion today. Definitely keep reflecting on it. I think maybe I don't want to keep us on longer than than I know we're all trying to get end of semester tasks done, but I will maybe summarize a couple of key points that I heard from our panel and from our audience today. So benefits to students, any ways we can connect to benefits to students in terms of recognition might be very beneficial. And then also, certainly we've heard of a lot of tools, and thank you everybody who's been putting different links and such in the chat. I think Meg has already done a great job of capturing those in our notes document that will be sent around afterwards. I think those concrete examples are also really helpful of different tools or funding mechanisms, for example, from ORCA that could be used to promote different recognition in this work. I do see a question from George to Erin about if just
Yeah.
how, yeah.
Yeah, I was just answering the chat, but I can voice over. So, yeah, it's funny. So I have this kind of two hats that I wear. One is a professor based in Mexico. Another is working with a US based nonprofit. So a lot of the activities that we do through ORCA are currently US based, also primarily funded by US based foundations, at least currently. So that's where we have our kind of focus on US activities. But we do have right now one project through ORCA that is focused in Latin America, and we would definitely like to expand that. And that's particularly, I think I mentioned at the outset, I'm interested in this intersection between open science and open education, and we're doing that in Latin American institutions. So hopefully we will be able to branch out with additional funding to other regions. But that's why a lot of our activities are currently US based. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thanks, Erin. And also maybe a good point that I know we've been talking a lot about US institutions on this call, but certainly JNIPER members span the globe, and there's a lot to learn from how institutions outside the US are recognizing or not. So thank you, Erin, for bringing some of that perspective in today. And we'll seek definitely to bring more of those voices in the new year. We've been kind of having a series over the past few months of pulling on different threads from this JNIPER white paper that I've mentioned ad nauseum at this point, but it's so important of ways that the public engagement community can, in physics particularly, can promote our work and make it part of the role of us as scientists, as physicists. And so recognition is a huge piece. I want to thank all of our panelists for contributing to this discussion today. And also say like this, not the end all be all, right? We continue into the new year, into 2026. We'll have more of these conversations. And if any of you have suggestions for different topics, themes, ideas that we should continue discussing or pick up from this conversation, please reach out to me or Meg because we are actively scheduling for the new year. And as Meg mentioned, I was going to say July. I'm now 7 months ahead. Our January community hour will be around civic science. And so I think this kind of maybe follows very nicely from our conversation today in terms of also like thinking about service learning and all of that. And so how some kind of applied or research practice partnerships in civic science can happen and maybe can be incorporated in your work. And we'll bring in our speaker will be bringing in some tools and such that you all might be interested in using and adopting. So I will end there. Again, thank you to Paul, Jonathan, and Erin. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope everybody has a wonderful end of their year and happy and healthy New Year celebration. Thank you, everyone.
If you want, I can show a 40-second video. That would be fun.
Sure, go for it. If we have some time, so if folks want to see it. I can stay on.
What do I want to do? I want to make this full screen. Continue to share.
Yep.
At Lapiscape, we are committed to exposing learners of all ages to the promise and potential of quantum technology to improve life on Earth for everyone. Why is it so important to engage the public? Because just as the myriad applications of this device were completely unknown to the people who actually invented this device, we understand that we absolutely need input from everyone if we are to reveal the hidden potential of quantum to make the world a better place.